This week, Labour's plans to abolish leasehold. What does it mean? What does it mean to you as a potential purchaser? What does it mean to us as tenants? And then secondly, UK house prices. What's going on? Are they tanking or going up? This is taken from Zoopla and the Daily Telegraph. And what we have basically is Zoopla forecasting house price growth and the government set to overhaul leasehold system. Big shifts are occurring in the property market in the UK as they have been since the Labour Party came in. But what does this mean for us as buyers or sellers or landlords? So basically, to summarise the Zoopla report, house prices are up 1.5% in February. Strongest start to the year for 3 years. Why is that? I would have said probably a lot to do with the stamp duty changes coming in, but also the interest rates are falling and we're seeing more positivity out there. New sales agreed are 12% up on year, which is very good. Annual rental inflation is down to 3%, it's lowest for 3.5 years. And rentals inflation in London is 1.1%. But the average UK rent is £1,284 a month. So it's down to 3%, but there are still 12 tenants chasing every single property out there and trying to get into it. So it's not as if it's an easy marketplace. The rental stock is still below the pre-pandemic levels, although it is up. Rental demand is down 17%, but again, it's still 12 people. It's because of lower immigration and the fact that first-time buyers are now getting into the market trying to avoid this stamp duty hike. The only place in the UK, all over the UK, where rental supply has actually fallen is the West Midlands. No idea why that is, couldn't tell you. Okay, affordability, market trends, rents have increased 24% in the last 3 years. 24%. So if you're a landlord and you're buying, then that means if you've got a 70% loan to value mortgage, that's really helping you out when it comes to your repayments and making sure they're all covered and paying the whole capital thing off. And this is the underlying fundamental of why we APW and I believe strongly in buy-to-let property as an asset class. Because you have inflation, which is going to be close to 4% by the middle of the year, towards the end of the year. And you have the tenant, and they're both paying off your mortgage for you. So it's a cracking investment. Renters are staying longer in properties, so that's again reducing supply. Also, it means that perhaps the tenants are happier than they were. Most significant rental growth areas are the Northeast, about 6%, Northern Ireland, which is 10%, and Blackburn, which is over 10%. Now, what are these changes that Labour are talking about bringing in? Well, they're actually quite controversial because if you think about it, they're talking about getting rid of all leasehold and just having something called common hold. And now that's not particularly popular for a variety of reasons. It's not popular because if you're a landlord, you're ceding control of your property. If you're an original owner of the land. If you're a tenant, it means you've got to take over the legal aspects and also the financial cost of paying for the common hold. So it's going to make it more expensive for people who are actually buying properties to run them because they won't have ground rent. And ground rent was paid to management companies, the landlords, so to speak. And they took care of all those aspects. Now, service charges across the board, which includes ground rent, have gone up by 11% over the last year. So that's a pretty bad increase. I think they're up to, on average, £2,300 per property, which is, as I just said, if the rent is £1,284, in some places it's going to be 2 months are going to go in service charges, which is the common areas and also the ground rent, because when properties that are not new build, they won't have the peppercorn ground rent that we have nowadays. You know, I have got clients I think there's a client in Watford, and he's paying nearly 3 months rent on service charge, which was ground rent plus service charge for the building. And it's a very old building, so it has a lot of effort to go into it. So it's not very popular from that perspective, in that it's putting the financial burdens onto the owner of the property, whereas before the person who owned the land that the property was built on dealt with those. And the leaseholders are going to lose income because they're going to not be able to charge their ground rent, which I'm sure they're making a profit on. So that's why it's a controversial thing. So the leasehold system is going to be abolished by the end of this Parliament, so within the next 4 years. Common hold introduced, no ground rent at all. If you don't pay the ground rent in the past, you could actually lose your property. That's going to be abolished, so no forfeiture of properties by landlords who own the land reclaiming that property because you haven't paid your ground rent. The white paper has been published, so it's all good to go. So it is going to go through. Is it going to be that popular? Remains to be seen. I know in Scotland, I don't really know the service very well, the system very well. I know in Scotland that it's always been like this. So it does work. It's a case of how will it work in England and Wales if they've never done it before. What is going to be the system of how to do it? How do you compensate leaseholders? There's got to be something there, some sort of mechanism that's going to compensate people. That's going to be difficult to put into place. So it's quite a controversial thing. Overall, it will be good for everyone, I think, and it just be the new. We just have to get used to it. That's the way it is. Okay, so that's it for this week. The UK market is doing well from a residential property perspective. Prices are going up, which is a benefit if you're a landlord. If you're not a landlord and you're trying to get on, then I apologise. It's not great for you. I'm not being skewed in any way, sort of saying it's great to be a landlord. I understand it's very difficult to be a tenant at the moment as well with the cost. And it's also difficult to get a good mortgage if you're trying to get onto the market. But the UK residential property market is going up. And if you are in the market to buy, which is obviously what we do at APW, then it's a good time to be doing so. So let's go to some questions. We had some great questions. We had from a gent, or could be a lady, Ash Black Hawk. Swap rates will flip for Europe soon. Inflation is about to hit entire Europe due to the war in Ukraine and America pulling out of it. This is the lowest inflation rate you'll see for 2 years. There's a likelihood that could be the case. I don't know really. I mean, Donald Trump, I'm not putting one side or the other forward, but Donald Trump seems to be an amazing negotiator, and his bluster seems to win people over, and they've forgotten what it's like to be blustered like that. It could well come to the most positive ending. I doubt it though. So we probably are going to see inflation rates going up. As I said, the Bank of England is expecting 3.7 to 4% by year end, but they think the wage inflation and the lack of job creation will combat that. What will happen to rents now that landlords are fleeing the market? That's from Marcus H. They're going to go up. Simple as that. It's going to be a time lag before the government can move people out of guest houses and into social housing. It's going to be a time lag before they build enough housing for renters to move into, but they're not really building the common market properties, they're building social housing. So it's not going to help or affect the major part of the marketplace. So rents will continue to go up, I do believe, which is unfortunate. Brum GP, excellent content, thank you. What is your experience with rent protection insurance? Is it worth having? Personally, I don't think so, no. Rent protection insurance is where you take out an insurance policy, and if the tenant doesn't pay the rent, it will pay 50% of it for a certain period or 75% for a certain period after the first month. Personally, I found if you do the job properly in the first place and you get a good tenant in a good property in a good location, then that will be covered and they will pay the rent, and you won't need that rent insurance. I personally have never had a void of more than 2 weeks on any properties that I've been looking after. So, and I don't use I don't use rent protection insurance. But I mean, belt and braces, take it out, why not? 2% of your rent. You might find it useful. So there we are, that's it for this week. Thank you very much for watching. Do take care, and don't forget the book behind me, which is not The Fast 800 by Dr. Michael Mosley. It's actually the Expat Property Playbook. It's well worth downloading and getting. It'll give you some top tips and some help. Do take care. Cheerio. Bye bye.